This one's for you, Exy Dude. A little less than a year ago, April 2024 for those of you late to the party, Jhariah dropped their most ambitious project yet. Concluding the PACT tour, it broke a trend of singles and EPs filled with remixes of older tracks. 3 hit singles and 10 original songs with a beautifully illustrated cover to tie it all together. And ever since, the Jhandom has been going nuts. As soon as I dropped the last video, I had people asking me when I'd cover the latest album. And while I promised the artists themselves I'd do it, it got a bit off schedule. I was preoccupied with the In Case I Make It deep dive, and the burnout that came with each part of that. And so long is spent on these longer videos that I end up craving the smaller, dumber, bite-sized ones. So, by the time I sat down to write this one, almost 7 months had passed. To me, there's 2 things that define this album. In a musical sense, there's a noticeable but gradual departure from Jhariah's older sound, especially in the handful of tracks that start to sound like a different artist altogether. Maybe Later Dance and Russian Doll packed a kind of instrumental that I wouldn't expect from Jhariah. I say gradual because it isn't entirely unfamiliar and distinct from his recent output, being more of a natural evolution than a sharp turn. But when viewed side by side with his previous LP, The Great Tale of How I Ruined It All, the differences are night and day. The artist and band really show off their hard rock chops here, while experimenting enough to keep it fresh. Eat Your Friends and Reconcerns may both rely on the electric guitar, but convincingly show off the gap between punk and metal. The other through line of this album is something I'll call the path to fame. Previous albums have had a name for the main character, like the pianist or the protagonist, but after not finding anything in the Discord, I decided to just name this album's character myself, the rock star. Since they were young, they've had dreams of making it big, creating music that doesn't just awe and inspire, but ideally goes triple-double platinum. They want the world to know their name, and thus far, they've had some hits, but they feel stuck, anxious over the gap between where they are and where they want to be. Trust Ceremony is a story about overcoming these fears, doubts, and mental roadblocks to take that next bold step into the future, processing their past and learning to live in the present. But we'll get into all of that later. For now, the usual terms and conditions apply. I recommend listening to the album all the way through before watching this video. Form your own opinions, and come back to compare notes. Show Jhariah some love, and please be respectful. And if you like this video, maybe leave a like and subscribe. I'm almost to 5K. With that, let's get into it. The opening of Trust Ceremony is filled with anticipation. Beginning with an echoing set of bells, haunting and ethereal, I'd compare PACT to an overture. It sounds like the band and their instruments are warming up, preparing to make their entrance, all while building this energy higher and higher. Piano, drums, glitchy synth, choral harmonies, and even the revving of an overdrive guitar like a chainsaw. All the while, the rock star can barely contain their excitement, ready for the music to finally begin after so long spent preparing. It's pretty thinly veiled commentary on the album itself. Trust Ceremony has been in production for 5 years, and though Jhariah has had a number of releases in the interim, he considers this his second full-length album. This was the big release, the one everyone had been waiting for. A brand new era, finally out of the shadow of Great Tale.
5 years planning for my entrance, kerosene for breakfast, all my friends as well, I'm spending time with pyrotechnics.
Jhariah and the rock star aren't going into this endeavor afraid. Too much time has been spent on that, a story that the upcoming songs will illustrate. No backing down, no hesitating. The Tooth Pact is an agreement to back up this confidence with more than just words, to add bite to the bark, so to speak. And the album, in turn, is the titular ceremony, a grand presentation of not just a new sound, but the artist's renewed trust in themselves. Alright, so track 2 is... Big Shot is directed towards someone with their foot on the precipice, believing they have what it takes, but never taking that leap of faith. While track 1's wording was a bit vague, we quickly dispense with the metaphors and acknowledge the album's subject, the entertainment industry. It's a wild beast that's impossible to cage, and even if you can somehow grab on and hold tight, you'll fall off eventually. That being said, it's one hell of a ride, and countless artists devote their lives to it, filming movie after movie, writing song after song, in hopes that one of them will get picked up and carry you to heights only dreamt of. The subject is one of those hopeful would-be celebrities, waiting for their chance to get noticed, for someone to see the diamond in the rough. But all the while, they try to be cautious while chasing that impossible dream. The lyrics pick apart this delusion, insisting that you'll never get anywhere, always playing it safe. Sticking to the same sound, something safe that the crowd will like, it's not enough. Being experimental comes with a lot of risks. Many big artists have tried to deviate and failed miserably. But the path to becoming a superstar is filled with uncertainty. Hell, even setting out along that path is a risk in itself. You walked into the casino, so you've got to be willing to gamble a bit to win big. Once again, countless artists are aiming for the same goal as you. They may occupy different niches or do things differently, but you are not the world's only hidden talent. While you're waiting around to be noticed and uplifted, there are many, many others putting themselves out there. So how else to stand out from the crowd than stand out from the crowd? Do your own thing. Make sure they remember your name. You can't count on happenstance to work in your favor, especially when you're but one light in a massive sea of stars. In a musical sense, the song reminds me a bit of Debt Collector. The dissonance between the fast-paced chorus and the more lyrically complex verses gives a little thrill when the song switches over. Between the two, though, I still prefer the payoff on the former. The second verse changes perspective from second person to first. And with the themes of the album in context, I don't believe it's someone else speaking. The berating sounds to me like it's self-inflicted, the rock star telling themselves to stop holding back and playing it safe. The meaning of you shifts in this verse, referring instead to the rock star's goal: fame, attention, a bigger audience. They try and try, but haven't yet caught the momentum, and worry that they'll never make it. And that's very much possible. You can have the stuff and just get unlucky, dying before you get the world's attention. Whether that's literal death or merely giving up, it's sadly very common. You've probably heard the statistic. Out of 1,000 writers that start a book, 30 finish it, and 6 get it published. And out of those 6, competing for readers to notice them, very few will reach the level of notoriety that writers aspire to. But hey, that's life. If you succeeded at everything on the first try, it'd lose meaning. The thrill of the game is trying, pushing yourself to your creative limits, and sticking the landing. I've had plenty of flops on this channel, and many, many more before ravsucks. And too often, I've obsessed over the times I succeeded, trying to play it safe and replicate it. But true development only comes about through experimentation, even if it means I die trying. I do play favorites when reviewing albums, and the intro to this song is just too good. A playful, distorted synth goes up and down and all around, punctuated by a deeper, bassier beat, leading into an opening vocal backed by echoes and oohs. This gives way to the song's main melody, where the synth continues to lead alongside drum beat, backed by a grungy guitar with distortion of its own. Certain sections of the song lose this lead synth, allowing this guitar to come more to the forefront and slowing down this song's intensity. All the while, Jhariah alternates between mile-a-minute lyrics and long stretched-out words that lean into the instrumentals. That opening lyric about concrete sets up the song in direct opposition to last song's theme of hesitation. Big Shot mentions shooting for the moon and landing among the stars, while here we start on the concrete beneath the rock star's dreams. You aimed high and fell to the ground beneath, but that's comforting. Having hit the bottom as an artist, there's nowhere to go but up, nothing to lose. The following verses describe the exhaustion, the desperation of the state they're in. The rock star works themselves half to death and spends the other half angsting over the path to fame. Are they not doing enough? Is there something they've missed? The artist is starstruck by this goal, represented again by the moon, that always calls them forward, but nothing has worked quite yet. Sure, the music has been successful, but not to the degree they hope for, not to the level they aspire to reach. Track 2 saw the rock star mock themselves for having such lofty ambitions, and yet being afraid to take a leap of faith. Track 3's title refers to the point at which they hit fuck it and start a fire for fun. Standing here on the concrete, so far below the moon, what does it matter to go a little crazy with it, to look past the pressure and just have fun with your music, even if it isn't guaranteed to succeed? The artist's fears and intrusive thoughts try to quiet this urge, being compared to bugs and hornets constantly buzzing in their mind. Anxiety is commonly represented by the more elegant phrase, butterflies in my stomach. But at least for the antsier among us, hornets in my lungs conveys the itch better. A noise you can't shut off, so annoyingly persistent and exhausting that it can give you a headache. It makes you question your gut decisions, put down your own good ideas, and over-exaggerate other people's perceptions of you. But the rock star simply tells this voice to shut up, that they'll start their fires anyway, having burned out on going the same way they're used to. This defiance grows angrier with each chorus. Intrusive thoughts don't go away easily, and it can be frustrating how they stick around, even when you think you've dealt with them. The last stretch of the song features a repeated statement covered with a sort of watery auto-tune. The rock star can't see the opportunities and success directly in front of them, instead distracted by this picture-perfect view of the future, the idealized image of their career, instead of what it is right now. They've already accomplished great things and have the potential to do something incredible, but it's not enough. This is nothing compared to what they could be, this greatness they have yet to achieve. But it's that same mindset that keeps them locked in this cycle. This is that same voice they spin the song demanding to shut up. Enough time dwelling on this imaginary future. Now it's time to take a risk. The song ends with a brief spoken interlude where the rock star gives in to the chaos, taking control of their destiny. They utter 4 commands: chance, truth, fear, and risk. The chance to achieve greatness. The truth that they've come farther than they believe. The fear that holds them back. And finally, the risk they're about to take. A galloping drum beat sets the pace for this song before a piano rolls into a guitar riff that leads in and out to the tune of the drums. I mention this right out the gate because this pace carries through most of the rest of track 4, in both instrumentation and vocals. Having crossed the threshold without looking back, the rock star exudes confidence in their decision, with the verses hosting some pretty clever brags. It's a complete 180 on the anxiety of the past 2 songs, but that seems intentional. If you're going to take a chance, you might as well put your full weight behind it. Being too cautious is just falling back into those same self-sabotaging patterns. You won't stay safe by only stepping halfway off the ledge. You're more likely to trip and fall on your ass. Overconfidence is also the rock star's way of reassuring themselves. You've got to learn to trust yourself if you want to succeed. These statements are the opposite of their intrusive thoughts because they're meant to counter those thoughts, to drown them out. There's a freeing feeling to casting these anxieties aside. It's not that you can't fail when you believe in yourself, but there's plenty of places you'd never go, things you'd never see if you held yourself back. Life is all about the choices we make and where they take us. And there's a lot of life you'll miss out on when you always play it safe. As the chorus addresses, the rock star has reached their breaking point, letting their frustration outweigh their fear. The aftermath of each chorus features bombastic trumpets, echoing the grandiose feeling of the artist's breakthrough. The second chorus is followed by a bridge with a music box sound that gives way into an intense metal scream, though it's a bit drowned out by the guitar and drums, which break their previous pace and go from a gallop to a full-on sprint. The chorus returns once more, ending on a different line this time around. You'd think this was the end of the song, with a 2-second silence afterwards. I thought as much while listening, and nearly skipped it, but I saw a good chunk of the runtime left, so decided to keep going. Sure enough, what follows sounds completely distinct from the song before. A sort of eerie circus theme with rolling metallic drums. There's more of an electronic distortion here, as the rock star continues to brag with a renewed arrogance. There's no competition that can keep up with them, and as a matter of fact, they only associate with those that can keep up. They trust themselves enough, they can support themselves, and whatever they lose, they'll win it back. Tracks 5 and 6 flow so naturally into one another, and with Collarbone being pretty short, I'll cover them both in one go. Collarbone is a pretty surprising sound. A soft piano gives way to some absolutely gorgeous vocals by Jhariah, backed by a choir that sounds straight out of a church service. Flipping back around to the more negative side of the coin, the rock star spills about the burden of pressure, even when praised for succeeding. The good you do outshines the effort it took to do it in a lot of people's eyes. This theme is carried directly into Penai, one of the album's singles, and a song with much more oomph to it. The trumpets immediately blare with a sort of wah-wah distortion before leading into a duet between the cymbals and bass line. We return once more to metaphors of space, but by now, the rock star is sick of the night. Working yourself to the bone, even if for a dream, can burn you out, making you resent the path to fame. They ask why they've been pushing themselves past their limits, why they can't stop while they're ahead. The vocal distortion in the song has a good kind of crunch to it in the bridge following that first chorus. As others have pointed out, the song reeks of gifted kid burnout. For those unfamiliar, lots of kids are raised with expectations and pressure that gets internalized. Believing in their own potential, they push themselves to live up to it. And when they inevitably can't match up, it leads to a fair bit of angst. It can apply to the rock star's current situation, being exhausted from musical work, but with lyrics like these, there's an implication that this has been a problem for a while. But the most definitive proof seems to be the final bridge before the last set of choruses. The rock star talks to a friend about how they don't need to do this to themselves, to pray for the strength to go on. These days, they cry more than their friend does about their plight. A kid wouldn't know how to cry for themselves. It reads like the singer consoling their past self, unable to see what they were putting themselves through at the time, now painfully aware of the consequences of the burnout. Just as each chorus of Fire for Fun grew more aggressive, each chorus in Penai grows more serious and grungy. The second chorus is accompanied by a wall of synth that skirts around Jhariah's vocals before returning to the sound of trumpets. The aforementioned final bridge even returns to the choral gospel sound from Collarbone, before being undercut by a heavy guitar riff that leads into a more desperate, screaming rendition of the repeating plea. The song fades out, both in terms of the intensity as everything softens, before the actual instrumental and vocals become fuzzy and grow quiet. Though this is just pure speculation, the changing of the tone could reflect the anger towards that mindset growing over time, as the rock star realizes the full scope of what was done to them and what they did to themselves. It grows to a raging head before gradually fading out, as the anger subsides into an understanding of how to treat themselves better, to comfort that inner child. And yet, endlessly chasing those same dreams runs into those same behaviors, as we've seen in track 3. Anxiety puts a real damper on your life, paralyzed with doubt and worry, preventing you from doing things you want to do, you'd love to do. Especially prevalent in social spaces, going into a crowded room, sitting there, and walking out without having talked to a single person. Ha ha ha, couldn't be me. While the past few tracks have been very internally reflective, track 7 uses second-person language to show idealization of another person, some peer of the rock star who they look up to, while being too shy to put themselves out there. This goes both ways, strangers who they wish would notice them, as well as friends who take the risks that the artist is afraid to. They angst how there's never enough time to think it through, when really, all that time is spent overthinking, holding yourself back by trying to convince yourself to take the leap. It's the same pervasive theme we've seen thus far of leaving your comfort zone, but no longer in a vacuum. The message is pretty applicable to social anxiety, but still takes place in the context of the music industry. You're constantly exposed to other artists, both within and outside your niche, seeing how they tackle challenges and put their own spin on the genre. There's plenty to take inspiration from, but also this fear that you'll never match up, that everyone else is doing it better than you. Why would someone listen to your debut album when there's veterans out there cranking out hits with ease? With this in mind, the chorus becomes more realized. The rock star wants to be just like the musicians in their circle, in awe of how they seemingly do it all. They try to hide their own problems and anxieties, putting on a mask of false confidence to imitate the artists they look up to. But these habits aren't described favorably and aren't sung with the same triumphant bravado as track 4, with the unspoken message being that it isn't sustainable. These artist-turned-idols have their own flaws and insecurities, and might have once felt the same way. Regardless of how they deal with it, the rock star can't copy someone forever. They have to find their own ways to cope with anxiety, build their own confidence and style. You can fake it till you make it, but you gotta make it at some point. Musically, track 7 is a bit more, how do I put this? California sounding. Guitar focused, but a bit lighter than the emo sound. The opening is something I could imagine skating or surfing to. The chorus and guitar solo are the song's highlights, with Jhariah hitting some passionate notes and holding on to them, while the desperate call of whatever it takes hits a beautiful harmony in the background. Pretty good. There's a quiet anger that grows louder and louder over the course of track 8. It uses the same trick from Pin Eye once again, repetitive lyrics with a changing tone to convey a sense of increasing emotion. The meaning of the song is pretty obvious. Daddy issues, or mommy issues, or both. Take your pick. I'm sure that Jhariah has used strings before on the album, but this is the first song where they truly stood out to me, providing a nice contrast against the synth that gradually grows bassier and more intense throughout the song. It nearly reaches dubstep-esque beat drops, though of course, Jhariah's singing steals the show. The lyrics depict a parent utterly disappointed in their son, wondering where they went wrong. They muse that perhaps they could have prevented this behavior had they been stricter, if they hadn't been so easy on him. Just like Big Shot, I don't believe the narrator to actually be the parent in question, and rather the child mocking them, recounting their words. The growing anger is not the parent's frustration with their son's behavior, it's the son's resentment for the verbal abuse. This is reinforced by the second verse and bridge. The former is more overtly sarcastic, with the parent admitting that they're stubborn and dead set on ruining everything and everyone. The latter finally switches perspective to the son, now directly questioning the parent, letting their anger spill out openly. Pin Eye discussed the rock star's childhood before, with vague allusions to expectations thrust upon them. A desire for excellence that was partially the artist's own passion, but also motivated by outside pressure. Put together, it seems likely that the parent expected great things from the rock star, who applied that mindset to their own interest, much to the former's dismay.
But it
Does the parent even see their son as a person, or just a tool, a means to grow their own success, to act out their whims and pursue their goals? If all they wanted was obedience, then the son may have failed at that, but they failed at being a parent. Another single, and the album's only collab song. Guest starring on this punk-laden track is Baltimore band Pink Shift, consisting of singer Ashrita Kumar, guitarist Paul Vallejo, and drummer Myron Hongbiji. Jhariah's music is no stranger to elements of emo and hard rock, but it really takes center stage here. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with hard rock, metal, punk, etc. It's either ear-bleeding harsh noise or a head-banging thrill ride. And I'm happy to say this firmly fits into the latter category. I'm not too crazy about the vocal style in the intro and outro, but hey, to each their own. Ashrita's singing complements Jhariah's Broadway flair so well, and despite the subject of the song, you can tell that they're having fun working together. Where maybe Later Dance sees the rock star admire and model themselves after their peers, Eat Your Friends is a sarcastic dig on the cannibalistic nature of the music industry. You can be buddy-buddy with other bands all you want, but at the end of the day, you're also each other's enemy. So many names and images crowded together in an algorithm, all fighting for people's attention. The consumer can only buy so many records, download so many songs, listen to so much music in one day. The lucky ones who see success crowd out the ones who don't, whether they intend to or not. Some artists may perform music as just a side gig or a hobby, but for many, this is their livelihood. Comparing success and being fed is not just for dramatics. Royalties and concert fees do put bread on the table for a lot of people. The image of billionaire rock stars balling out is so common in our minds, but the entertainment industry is just as capitalist as any other. The cloaked brutality is brought to the surface here, where Jhariah and Pink Shift say they might as well literally kill their friends in the industry. While in the past, the rock star looked up to these artists, now insecurity begins to seep in. Why do their peers get so popular while they get left behind in obscurity? What are they doing wrong that seems to come naturally to everyone else? Could the rock star reach the heights they aspire to if someone else wasn't hogging the spotlight? That's the twisted beauty of a competitive market. You don't need to tell them to fight each other. All you have to do is show them unequal success and let jealousy do the rest. Luckily, enough people recognize the evils of the system to look past it. And it's clear from the outtakes and exaggerated tone that Jhariah and Pink Shift don't genuinely subscribe to these notions. If Control Baby was angry, this one is fucking furious. Track 10 is a bit more specific than the general Path of Fame story, referring to a real-life incident that occurred on tour. No names are mentioned, nor will I do any digging, but I'm sure they got the message. I mean, god damn! What drives someone to hate someone else this much? By all means, go off, King, but damn! The rest of the song is full of this kind of vitriol. Jhariah nearly screams through all of it, and even in the moments where they give their voice a rest, the words he's saying are still unceasingly brutal.
To pull the spikes in my wasted
For context, members of a group Jhariah was touring with created a document with bogus allegations against him, which they sent to his manager with hopes that she would take action. Each and every member of this group was wiped, with an implication that these were crocodile-tier Karens, upset that Jhariah didn't give them the respect they believed they were entitled to. What actually went down and what was on the document are unknown. But hey, that's none of my business. The important part is that Jhariah was left stunned, confused, and bitter right before a show, and wrote this song as a response. Hence the title, as directly confirmed on Twitter. While the pain of the betrayal is evident, the song is also a warning that the artist can do just fine without the Judas in their entourage. Words like vampire and parasite are used. Jhariah insinuates that they'll eclipse their enemies, and thus far, he's been carrying them on his back. Keep in mind that Jhariah wasn't just a touring partner or a guest. He had hired the musicians, who then proceeded to stab him in the back. It's no idle threat that the artist doesn't need them. The tour simply proceeded with a different backing group. The song builds up to a paraphrase of the email that started it all. The first half of the instrumental is something straight out of MCR's catalog, before dying down into a musical-esque blend of piano and drum pad, with that eerie bass synth from Control Baby underscoring it. Also like in Control Baby, Jhariah reads mockingly from the perspective of the parasite, accusing the artist of disregard for their emotional scars and admitting their own spineless nature. The tone aside, I could see the first half of this monologue as being more or less directly ripped from the inciting incident, with a mask of false kindness that shows more subtle insecurities.
I often worry people like him hear me speak and get annoyed, and though he never seems to say it, I can hear it in his voice.
In terms of the overall themes of the album, it's not out of place, especially as the last track already addressed the backstabbing nature of the music industry. You can joke about eating your friends all day, but some people you work with won't have your best interests in mind. Jhariah, I love you, but you're a bit of a nerd for this song title. Jokes aside, while we're still hard rockin' with that emo guitar, track 11 feels like the emotional calm after the storm. In the end, Trust Ceremony is a positive story of self-growth, but we had to work through a lot of pain to get here, whether self-inflicted or put upon the rock star by supposed friends and family. The long and winding road hasn't been an easy one to walk. But while life isn't sunshine and rainbows, it's not all darkness either.
I understand now the world will not leave me behind, but it will not wait up.
A constant question has been whether the rock star's voice will go unheard, if they'll die waiting for the world to see them. So many shoot for the moon, and while the saying goes that you'll land among the stars, they've been worried that they'll just hit the pavement. The artist has dealt with burnout and betrayal before, and the path ahead doesn't look much easier. But what's been holding them back is this fear of taking a leap, of stepping out of the world they know and into a new one, full of danger, but also possibility. Having crossed over into the other side, there's a reassurance that the opportunities are out there for them, so long as they're willing to put in the effort. There's people out there that will support them without an ulterior motive, so long as they're willing to put themselves out there.
Remember this good and it will not wait up.
The reference to the titular character is not just for shits and giggles. Sasuke Uchiha grows up from tragic circumstances with a single-minded focus on revenge. His growth, his strength is all a means to an end, and he's willing to turn his back on his home in order to see his revenge complete. But despite his attempts to succeed alone, he finds unexpected strength in his friends and allies. Even his greatest enemy shows him affection he hadn't expected, shattering his worldview and setting him on the slow path to redemption. Mirroring the song's lyrics, he goes forward, no longer held back by the ghosts of his past, and eventually still finds forgiveness and redemption in friends who never gave up on him. Sasuke's world is still filled with evil, but once again, there are people who will fight by his side as long as he puts in the effort to grow.
It took me all this time to realize that I might not be.
Like Tooth Pact, there's a rising, lifting feeling to this song, but it doesn't feel like mounting tension. Rather, the feeling of an exhale to Tooth Pact's inhale, releasing the energy and uncertainty that we've been going back and forth between all album. I'd say this is a wonderful finale, where there are not two songs after this. I don't use the term lightly, as it feels corroded by 2010's gamer culture, but there's an epic feeling to these last two tracks. Longer, fancier, and more climactic than the music that preceded them. An epic song isn't inherently better. I love my 3-minute doses of pop rock that give me adrenaline without overstaying their welcome. But dare I say that Russian Doll really sees Jhariah step out of his influences and into his own. My go-to comparisons for their music thus far are 2000s emo and Broadway musical. But the first songs that came to mind here were Mike Oldfield's Nuclear and Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven.
There's a feeling I get when I look to the west, and my spirit is crying for leaving. And the ashes are all cold now, no more bullets, and the embers are dead.
The opening instrumental begins with 4 columns of sound, a low, braying synth, the rapid crescendo of the cymbals, and a heavy guitar riff. It seems like the start to another hardcore track, but the piano betrays its intentions, giving it away early that it's a slower, more somber tune. In my first Will Wood video, I referred to the sound of Hand Me My Shovel as Western, and I get that sort of vibe here as well, though even more melancholy than that track. It's the kind of theme that would play in a movie when the hero's at rock bottom, drinking their cares away and wondering how it all went wrong. Usually, they'd have an epiphany and rush off to make it right, but we're not quite there yet.
If I know that tomorrow will bring new lows, can I still go?
Coming right off the hopeful tone of Sasuke, at first, Russian Doll might seem out of place. The rockstar muses on their exhaustion, the aches and pains they've accrued while striving for more. The world wants so much from them, and as their success grows, so does the weight placed upon their shoulders. They hardly feel alive, not noticing the severity of their mental wounds, having trudged along without rest. If you're feeling deja vu, it's for good reason. It's covering the same ground as Pin Eye, though from a different angle. Track 6 reflected on the rockstar's past, their youthful determination to push past their limits, a habit they haven't yet kicked. It's here that they finally burnt out once again, unable to force themselves back to work.
But I've seen these calls before. So why can't I recall?
Just as in Beginner's Guide, Trust Ceremony's themes can be cyclical. Depression isn't something you cure once and never encounter again. Just because you get over your burnout doesn't mean you're immune to falling by the wayside. Hell, I lay on the couch half brain dead after every deep dive. It can be so disappointing to have thought you were over this, that you'd recovered, only to fall back into that slump. You start to worry that this will happen again and keep happening. Or maybe you never truly got over that first fall, and you'll never be as good as you once were. Having already spent the album angsting over fears of failure, of not being good enough, Russian Doll is the rock star at their most desperate.
I'm scared out of my mind, stuck inside a hole.
The title represents this recurring cycle. A matryoshka doll is a type of Russian doll that holds smaller versions of itself within its own body. Every time you open it, there's another doll within it that itself holds another. Every breakthrough, every recovery only eventually gives way to another breakdown. You feel trapped, and especially if you're dead set on victory, feel held back by your own mortality. As we progress through the song, the gentle strum of the guitar grows angrier and louder, overtaking the leading drum beat in the verses. The chorus follows a waltzing rhythm and introduces a welcome surprise instrument: saxophones. Seriously, listen to that solo. There's a fear in this repeating cycle that the rock star will snap and break until one day they can't bend anymore. It makes the path ahead feel hopeless, and momentarily they begin to revert back to the doubts that consumed them earlier in the album, throwing in the towel, unwilling to do this dance again. But after the last chorus, the music changes. Like with other songs, the same patterns grew more intense with each chorus, as murmurs become screams and strums become guttural growls. Then the saxophone takes over, beginning a musical ascent truly unmatched by anything else on the album. If I could compare it to anything, it'd be Billy Joel's best in regards to the horns, but even the piano man couldn't hit these notes. It's a strange emotion that this outro creates, having not overcome that feeling of hopelessness. The rock star sits and laments at what feels like rock bottom, but here they begin to pull themselves up, not yet believing it's over, not yet ready for the painful road ahead, but fueled by something else, the very thing that got them in this hole, that's dominated their life, that kept them bound by fear, and then pushed them to take a risk. Passion, love for their art, their music, dreams that are unachievable and impossible, and yet, if they keep going, they can get a few steps closer, grasp the shadows of that light beyond the clouds. And sure enough, the last lines switch from fearing that this is the first of many to hoping it is. For after every defeat, beyond the recovery, the road continues. It's painful, but they found their way back before, and they'll do it again, and again, as many times as necessary.
Can it be our first of many, first of many, first of many?
The final curtain call is fittingly the closest to a stage musical that this album gets. Right off the heels of track 12, the rock star gets up, dusts themselves off, and faces the future a little wiser from their experiences. I know finding balance sounds like a cop-out in terms of analysis, because that's always the solution to everything. Striking a good work-life balance, setting boundaries while still remaining kind, being firm but understanding, everything in life is dictated by that impossible meeting point between two opposing forces. But I mean, what did you expect? The moral of the story can't be go full throttle with no inhibitions all the time. And as an album about trusting oneself, it also can't be proceed with caution, don't push yourself. We've ebbed and flowed back and forth between these two viewpoints all throughout Trust Ceremony. the constricting feeling of playing it safe versus the euphoric freedom of taking risks. At the same time, the artist has grappled with the bottomless desire for success versus the unbearable wounds of pressure and burnout.
Just watch your sunshine been on my skin. Not so thin, but not harder.
It can be tough to take criticism without taking it to heart, feeling like you'll never overcome the problems in your work, attempting to go forth with a sense of confidence, held back by the fear that there's some flaw, some imperfection you're becoming blind to. But as the rock star says, you need to have thick enough skin to not be wounded by callous words, but thin enough to be shaped by criticism. It's not easy, and will likely take plenty of trial and error, but if your work is important to you, you'll dig in your heels and weather the storm.
Well, I know when I've gone too far.
The opening to track 13 is a beautiful fluttering piano piece, joined by lightly wailing guitars and much more as the song progresses. Drums, horns, you name it. In its later sections, it almost reminds me of a happy-go-lucky Queen instrumental, with a triumphant feeling emanating from each member of the band. You feel the crawl back up from Russian Doll, turn to a walk, then to a jog, to a run. That false arrogance from risk, risk, risk is gone, but it's replaced by something much more genuine. In that song, the rock star had paraded around like nothing could stop them, that they could succeed even alone, but we saw where that got them. Here, there's an acknowledgement of their limitations, that they could fail again, but that doesn't invalidate their dreams of grandeur. It's a guiding light that provides direction to their creative energies, motivation through their darkest days.
These sensations of aspirations make me whole. Someday it keeps me warm when the present gets too cold.
But trust ceremony isn't just about their future. In order to move forward, they've had to reckon with their past. A kid who pushed themselves and was pushed by people around them in search of greatness, growing up too quickly in hopes that it would pay off. Track 13's final message isn't just a moral for the audience. It's a reassurance for the rock star's younger self. Words of comfort to bring closure, healing that wound in their heart that this journey reopened. Shoot for the stars and do it with all your heart, but don't forget to look back and see just how far behind the earth is. Your progress is meaningful, even if you're not done, even if you'll never be done, and don't take the present for granted. Every step of the path to fame is important, and if you never live your life until you've reached the end, was it all that worth it?
Fall in love with who you want to be, but please don't fall so hard.
Just like last track, the finale leads into a distinct outro, where a marching drum beat carries us out. The background is filled with chattering noises, trumpets, twinkling bells, and what sounds like a sports whistle. An electronic voice, credited as Jhariah but sounding closer to Siri, repeats a set of 2 lines over and over again, gradually becoming glitchier and more distorted, before being replaced by a chorus of voices. Jhariah and the members of the band. Note that when I say chorus, I don't refer to something like the ethereal church-like chorus of Collarbone. No, this sounds more like the disjointed chant of a drinking song, and indeed it carries a more jovial tone. And this kind of ending is fitting. No one is an island, and no one truly achieves success alone. Friends are there to help you to become the person you're meant to be. And it's touching that at the very end, we zoom out from the perspective of the rock star allowing everyone who made this album possible to join in song. All together now. An artist puts so much of themselves into their work, and I know that when I come up with a character like the protagonist or the rock star, I'm likely touching on a lot of Jhariah's own feelings, especially with meta-commentary in PACT and the outright admissions about concerns. I'm sure the subtext here has a lot to do with his feelings on his own music. It's safe to say then, a year later, the risk has paid off. I see people talk more about Trust Ceremony than any other album, and while I didn't find as rich a history of analysis as with Beginner's Guide, I'm sure it'll crop up in no time. But while last time around I felt lost in a new world, with Trust Ceremony, I didn't feel the need to consult as many resources. There's a more open intent with this album, as it wears its heart on its sleeve. Beginner's Guide made sense, with a clear through line, but I couldn't connect to it in the same way. A group of disconnected songs made to fit into a single narrative just doesn't have the cohesion of a project of this scale. Every track serves to advance the rock star's growth in some way. When even the singles feel tied to the heart of the album, you can see how methodically planned out this all was. That heart is trust, the singer learning to trust themselves and all that comes with the territory. To trust oneself means to follow your heart, even when uncertain about the outcome. It means to allow yourself to rest and heal, even when you have so far to go. It means to love yourself and appreciate how far you've come, even if you're not yet where you want to be. The rock stars spend so long angsting over how burnt out they are when their ambitions are still out of reach. But they've accomplished more than they know, and are doing so despite past betrayals and cruelties set against the backdrop of an indifferent industry. To move forward, they have to stop holding themselves back, while also not holding themselves to an impossible and unhealthy standard. In time, they will arrive at their destination, but the journey is just as important. It's all pretty common advice, but it's made more poignant because of how personal it all feels. It's easy to hear these words from someone else, but rather difficult to admit it to yourself. I've no idea where Jhariah is going next, but I see some real potential here. Glimpses of rock legends in the composition and storytelling of this album. I'll be waiting patiently for their next release, though if you're listening, don't rush. Even if it's another 5 years, it'll be 5 years well spent. Even with Trust Ceremony done, there's a pretty extensive to-do list of videos in various stages of production. A time travel video, a Sonic video, a Takanaka video, Scissor Sisters, surgery, you name it. Grad school and work are double teaming me right now, and I'll be moving soon, so apologies for any delays. Thank you all so much for watching. I kinda ran out of things to say in this credit sequence, and I assume nobody ever watches this anyway, so I don't know. I modded my Wii recently. The trickiest part was getting it to connect to the internet, since it uses an older frequency. I called my internet provider, but I didn't have my account number, so they wouldn't help me. But then it just started working randomly. Hey, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, am I right? Whatever the case, hit me up if you play online Mario Kart. Maybe we can catch a race sometime. Till then, see ya.